Tonight, you step into a world hushed by snow, where every tree holds its breath beneath a sky of stars. The wind moves gently, stroking the branches like a lullaby, and the frozen earth beneath your boots creaks softly, not in protest, but in greeting. A forest spreads around you wide, quiet, infinite, a tapestry of pine and birch stitched together with frost and moonlight. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere special, I'd love to know. Drop your location and your local time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The forest keeper lives alone, not lonely, but alone, in the way a candle flickers with presence even when no one watches. His cabin sits where the trees part just enough to make room for a wooden porch and a stack of pine logs beside the door. It is not a grand place, but it breathes, and the keeper has long since learned to hear it. You watch as he opens the door in thick wool layers, shoulders dusted with snow, a small axe in one hand, and steps out without urgency. The early morning frost hasn't lifted yet. The sun is only a pale hint behind the horizon. Finland's far north in early winter sees more dusk than day. Here, light is borrowed, not owned. The keeper listens first, always listens. The rustle of a squirrel's leap from branch to branch, the whisper of snow sliding off a bent pine bough, the slight creak of ice along the surface of a narrow stream just beyond his cabin. Nothing screams for attention here. Nothing tries to be anything more than what it is. He breathes in, slowly. He doesn't count the breath, doesn't label it. He just watches. Breath comes, breath goes. The trees have taught him this long ago. He tried to count everything: calories, steps, hours, thoughts. It made him restless. The numbers never ended, only multiplied. But a winter night in this forest, years ago, when the wind howled and his firewood was soaked, he stopped fighting the cold and simply watched it. He did not become cold. He became still. Now, most mornings begin this way. A quiet walk to check the traps, though he rarely catches anything these days. The walk is the point. The snow crunches beneath his feet, and already a crow has followed him. Just one. They are smart creatures, always watching, but never rushing in. The trap is empty. He nods, no disappointment. He resets it gently, not because he hopes to trap, but because he honors the practice. Back at the cabin, he lights the small stove with practiced ease. Birch bark first peeling strips like parchment, dry and curled, followed by the smaller logs. You hear the pop and hiss of sap turning to steam. The room warms slowly. Above the stove, a metal kettle holds water drawn from a well just before the freeze. In this silence, even water sings. A low gurgle, a rattle of lid against rim, and then the long exhale of steam. He pours tea, nothing fancy, pine needle and nettle. The forest's gift. He doesn't sweeten it, doesn't need to. It tastes alive. As he sips, his eyes settle on the window. Frost feathers the edges, forming delicate patterns that mimic the branches outside. This he thinks, is where clarity lives, not in the intellect, but in presence. You don't need to understand everything. Just look, and look again. He remembers something his teacher once told him when he was younger and thought peace meant never being disturbed. You misunderstand stillness. It's not the absence of sound. It's the end of resistance. At the time, he didn't understand. Now, he smiles. You follow him through his routine, cleaning the kettle, sweeping the porch, chopping a few logs. Even the axe seems to move mindfully, rising, falling, splitting the wood without hurry. The rhythm is quiet, not because it's slow, but because it's intentional. And in that rhythm, he finds a kind of dharma. No scripture recited aloud, no golden statues, no temples, just the cold, the wood, the steam, and the breath. These are his teachers. Outside, a fox leaves prints in the snow, weaving between the trees like a ghost. The forest keeper watches, hands tucked into his wool sleeves. He knows not to follow. Some things pass through your life, like thoughts you see them. Acknowledge them and let them go. Clinging only creates confusion. At noon, the sun barely breaks the trees, throwing long shadows in a pale golden light. The forest sparkles in silence. Here, you realize, even silence isn't empty. It's full of awareness. There's a small bench he built years ago by the stream. You walk there with him, the air crisp against your cheeks. The stream doesn't run. It sleeps beneath a crust of ice. But beneath that stillness, water moves, always moving, even unseen, like thoughts, like karma. He sits, not to meditate, but to sit, which, of course, is the same thing. Birdsong returns in short bursts, tiny warblers testing the warmth. The keeper doesn't respond. He listens. This listening is the same as breathing, the same as bowing, the same as living. And you begin to understand, slowly, that the Dharma isn't only taught in words. It's offered in icicles, in breath clouds, in the way a crow lands without apology. You don't have to name the lesson. You don't have to analyze it. You don't even need to agree. Just being here is enough. The story is telling itself through pine and snow and firelight. It does not need your permission to unfold. The forest does not demand you grow. It only shows what happens when you stop resisting the season you are in. And so, you breathe again. The storm came quietly, as northern storms often do, without thunder or drama. Only the soft, persistent fall of snow that changes the shape of everything without asking permission. You wake to a forest gone mute. Even the birds are still. It's as if the sky pressed a single cold hand against the earth and whispered, "Hush now." The keeper steps out onto the porch again, breath fogging in the frigid morning air, and immediately sees it. The birch tree by the edge of the clearing has fallen. It was old, that tree, white-barked and long-suffering, with a curved spine and a lopsided crown. The keeper used to lean against it in summer, watching ants crawl its peeling trunk and moths nestle into its rough grooves. He once thought it would outlive him. But impermanence is funny that way. It never waits for you to feel ready. He approaches it slowly, not in grief, but in respect. The roots had given up their hold sometime during the night, not a dramatic splintering, just a gentle collapse into the snow. The top of the tree still glistens with ice, needles coated in frost, trunk resting like a sleeping creature. He kneels beside it and places a gloved hand on the bark. It's cold, but not lifeless. Nothing in the forest ever truly ends. Not even this. There's a memory, now rising like steam. Years ago, back when he first moved to the cabin fleeing a life that had grown too loud, he had a dream of falling trees. Not terrifying ones, but graceful, quiet, slow. In the dream, each fall made room for something new. He didn't understand it then, but looking at the birch now, he does. It's not about avoiding endings. It's about meeting them without resistance. He spends the morning trimming some of the branches not to use. Not yet, but to honor the form while it remains. There's a kind of ritual to it. He speaks softly, though no one hears him. Or perhaps the forest does. The term anicca floats gently to mind impermanence, the first flavor of the Buddha's teachings. Not just that things end, but that all things change, even joy, even grief, even thoughts. He remembers an old lesson that if you grip the past, you carry weight that no longer exists. If you fear the future, you chase shadows that haven't arrived. But if you stand in this moment, with snow on your boots and breath rising like prayer, you are free. The sun arcs low and faint over the trees as he hauls the trimmed branches toward the cabin, leaving the trunk where it fell. Nature does not rush decay. In time, the birch will feed beetles, then fungi, then soil, and finally the next generation of pines. And that's how it's always been. Inside, he lights the stove again. The firewood now carries a story, a fallen tree, a winter storm, a quiet surrender. He stirs the coals with reverence, as though stoking a memory. Outside, you notice the forest hasn't mourned. It's simply adjusted. Pine needles bend a little differently. Light hits the clearing in a new way. Even the fox trail reroutes itself instinctively. Nothing clings. As the day wanes, the keeper climbs a small ridge nearby a hill he visits when he wants a wider view. The climb is slow. The snow knee-deep in parts, but he's used to the rhythm. One breath, one step, repeat. At the top, he looks out across the white expanse of forest, endless trees stretching in every direction like green and white ripples across the earth. And from here, the fallen birch is invisible. The world did not stop spinning for one fallen tree. But he did. And that's what matters. He sits on a stone warmed by the day's sunlight and pulls out a pouch of dried berries. Just a handful. Lingonberries. Tart and bright. A small indulgence. Even Zen teachers get snack breaks. As he eats, he watches the shadows lengthen. He knows that suffering begins not when things change, but when we pretend they won't. In the forest, nothing resists the cycle. Not the leaves, not the snow, not even the keeper. He hears a crack, far off a branch breaking under its own weight. And then silence again. There's a certain beauty in not rushing to fill the silence, in letting the echo settle, in letting what falls stay fallen, in letting go. The forest keeps growing. By the time the stars return, he's walking home. He doesn't light a lantern. He doesn't need one. The moon is enough, and the snow reflects every beam like a whisper returned. Back at the cabin, the tea is warm again. He sips slowly, eyes closed, and you do the same, wherever you are, listening, not analyzing, just receiving. The birch has fallen, but in its falling, space opened. And now, space can begin to speak. The morning air is so still, you can hear the weight of your own breath. Even the snow seems to muffle itself differently today, less like a blanket, more like a veil. The keeper steps out quietly, as always, boots crunching softly beneath him, and scans the ground without any real urgency. The forest is not in a rush. Why should he be there, just beyond the cluster of pine saplings? A series of footprints pressed gently into the snow. Large, wide, purposeful, the kind made by an elk, a lone one. Judging by the spacing, likely male. You can tell by the way the prints arc around the stand of birch saplings, careful, steady, yet unafraid. The keeper crouches by them, gloved fingers trailing just above the imprint. Not touching, just observing. These prints are not just evidence of movement. They're a story mid-sentence. The elk passed through here in the early hours, probably before sunrise, when the sky was still painted with lingering stars and the clouds breathed quietly overhead. There's something about seeing tracks in the snow that feels like reading a journal entry never meant for you. It's intimate, yet impersonal, present, yet already gone. And like thoughts, he realizes they vanish by morning. How many times had he once tried to cling to each thought that wandered through his head, cataloging, judging, replaying, even resenting them, as though the mind were a courtroom and each emotion on trial. But thoughts, like elk tracks, are meant to pass. They appear, they point, and they fade. The elk's trail leads westward, toward the ridge, but the keeper doesn't follow. To follow would be to interrupt. Instead, he walks alongside for a few steps, then veers off, giving the path space to dissolve as it should. At the base of a nearby pine, he notices a pile of snow, disturbed paw prints this time. Smaller. A fox, perhaps chasing a hare, or playing, or both. Life here is both survival and play, and often indistinguishable. It is only humans who divide them. He continues toward a small clearing where the sunlight occasionally breaks through. In the center stands a stone circle, just 5 rocks arranged in a rough spiral. No ancient monument, just something he built over time. One stone for each teaching he carries in his heart: impermanence, mindfulness, non-attachment, compassion, and surrender. Today, snow dusts their tops. They look like silent monks in white robes, seated in meditation. He sits beside them, knees in the snow, and exhales. For a while, nothing happens. No grand realization, No mystical vision, just stillness. And that, somehow, is enough. He watches his thoughts rise, an old memory here, an ache in the knee there. The question of whether he should repair the roof soon, and then watches them go, like breath turning to mist and vanishing into the trees. A woodpecker taps somewhere off in the distance. The rhythmic knock, knock, knock echoes through the trees, like a bell without a temple. He smiles. Nature doesn't need temples. The forest is its own monastery. When he stands again, the wind has picked up slightly. Not harsh, just insistent. It moves through the pine needles and waves, making the whole forest sound like it's whispering secrets. And maybe it is. Maybe it always has been. He returns to the cabin by early afternoon. The footprints are already fading under light flurries. Soon they'll be gone entirely, as if the elk had never passed. He prepares a simple lunch barley stew with dried mushrooms and herbs. It simmers slowly, and the scent fills the room with a kind of quiet comfort. There is no rush to eat. There's nowhere else to be. Above the fireplace, a faded drawing hangs a simple line sketch of a pine tree, done in black ink. He made it during his first month here. Back when the silence still felt heavy, he had needed something to do with his hands. The drawing isn't particularly good, but it is honest. And in that, it is perfect. He eats while watching the snowfall thicken. It's mesmerizing. The way the flakes move, not like rain, not like mist, but like the forest is being returned to itself piece by piece. As the stew warms his belly, he remembers something his teacher once said with a grin. Even thoughts disappear if you stop feeding them. At the time, he thought it was a joke. Now, he sees it as one of the kindest instructions he's ever been given. Later, he picks up a broom made of bound pine branches and sweeps the cabin floor. Not because it's dirty, but because tending to a space tends the heart. Each stroke is a kind of meditation, clearing dust, making room, letting go. Outside, the wind shifts again. The footprints are gone now, entirely erased. The elk has passed. And with him, the thoughts. You take a deep breath, and you realize it's okay not to remember every step. Some things were meant to vanish by morning. Snow continues to fall, soft as breath, and the world narrows to a monochrome hush. The forest keeper fastens his coat and steps outside, not with a plan, but with an instinct. Some days call for walking without destination. The forest, after all, doesn't move with purpose, it simply responds. You follow his footprints as he walks, not quite toward the stream, not quite away, just drifting, letting the landscape guide him. His boots crunch over a thin layer of newly fallen snow, covering yesterday's trails like time slowly folding back over itself. He carries a small cloth satchel with him. Inside are two objects, a pine cone and a small smooth pebble. They don't seem important. They don't look ceremonial, but they are. The pine cone is old, brittle, picked up from a forest floor weeks ago. It had landed beside the fallen birch and sat unnoticed until the keeper saw it half buried in ice. Its scales had already opened, releasing its seeds to wind and snow. empty, yet still whole. The pebble is smooth, gray, shaped not by a craftsman's hand, but by a stream's slow patience. He'd found it the previous spring, while sitting by the water's edge, watching the surface ripple around fallen branches and melting snow. It had shimmered in the sunlight, barely distinguishable from the others, except that it felt like something. Today, he carries them both in his pocket, the way a monk might carry a mala or a traveler a compass, not as tools of action, but reminders of truth. He reaches the place where the stream used to sing. Now, it's frozen, a narrow silver ribbon under a glassy crust. He kneels by its edge, pulls out the pine cone first, and places it gently atop the ice. You wonder why. There's no ritual here, no words, just placement. Then the pebble. He sets it beside the cone. Two objects, one light, one heavy, both changed by time, both untouched by ego. He watches them silently for a long moment, then speaks just loud enough for the forest to hear. Cause and effect, he says, wait and release. And just like that, a Dharma teaching. The pine cone had once clung tightly to its seeds. Only with heat or time did it open. It had to endure to release what it carried. The pebble, meanwhile, became smooth by surrendering. It didn't resist the current. It let the river shape it. And now, it rests with no corners left to catch on. Karma, he thinks, is not a threat. It's not punishment. It's pattern. Condition, meeting condition. Just like snow falling on ice, like footsteps melting beneath a warming sun. You don't receive karma because you deserve it. You receive karma because something in the world matched what you carried inside. He recalls the many winters he once spent angry that peace didn't come quickly, that the forest didn't offer answers fast enough. But now, he understands, peace doesn't come because you earn it. It comes when you stop bargaining for it. The pine cone and the pebble say nothing, but their silence speaks. He picks them up again, brushes them clean, and continues along the stream's edge. Overhead, a raven cuts across the sky, wings wide, a quiet shadow against the whiteness. The keeper thinks of a question he asked his teacher long ago. If everything is cause and effect, where is freedom? The teacher smiled and pointed to a river. Freedom is in how you move with the current. And so, as the wind begins to rise, the keeper bows gently to the stream, not because it asked for reverence, but because it reminded him of what moves beneath all things. By afternoon, the snow deepens. He returns to the cabin, places the cone and pebble beside the hearth, and sits down cross-legged on the floor. The fire crackles, its rhythm quiet and ancient. You can feel the heat wrap around you like a memory of summer. He closes his eyes not to sleep, not to meditate, not even to reflect, but to simply stop doing. To stop being anything other than here. One breath more. You feel yourself doing the same. The pine cone taught release. The pebble taught surrender. And the stream, though frozen, still teaches flow. Evening arrives gently, like a wool blanket drawn slowly over your shoulders. The light doesn't vanish. It fades, slips behind the branches, tints the snow with pale rose and lavender. The air is still, except for the occasional sigh of wind through the pines, and the keeper returns to his small cabin, brush of snow trailing behind him like a comet's tail. Inside, the fire waits its glow, not just warm, but welcoming. He moves with ease, placing another log into the stove. The scent that rises is unmistakable resin, sap, an old pine, like the memory of an entire forest distilled into smoke. He sits beside the hearth, cross-legged, a worn cushion beneath him, the cone and pebble resting nearby as silent company. Above him, hung on a beam, is an old copper kettle suspended by chain. It creaks as it shifts with the rising heat. And once more, the room is filled with that hum wood crackling, kettle murmuring, the sound of life without rush. As he stokes the flames, his mind drifts not into thought, but into memory. His grandfather, a man of few words and many silences, once tended this very cabin, long before Buddhism ever entered the keeper's life. His grandfather taught him Zen without calling it Zen. He remembers a night much like this one. A younger version of himself, restless from the cold and the quiet, had asked, "Aren't you lonely out here?" The old man had chuckled, stirring the fire with a crooked iron poker. "No," he said. "Out here, everything speaks. It's just that humans forgot how to listen." At the time, the answer had annoyed him. He wanted something clearer, sharper, something with rules and lines. But now, years later, he understands. His grandfather didn't mean hearing. He meant attention. The forest doesn't shout. It nudges. Back then, the old man kept bundles of herbs hanging from the rafters: mint, yarrow, juniper. He used to crush dried pine needles in his palm and say, "Breathe this in. That's peace." He didn't teach with books. He taught with wood smoke and soup. The keeper opens a small wooden drawer and pulls out a bundle pine resin wrapped in cloth, a relic from his grandfather's time. He places it near the stove, and soon the scent deepens, sweet and sharp, the kind of smell that makes memories feel like they're happening again. He smiles. His grandfather never said let go, but he showed him how, by being a man who didn't clutch, not to anger, not to pride, not even to time. Later, the keeper steps outside again. The sky is turning its deep blue, the kind of blue that only happens when day and night blur together in snow-heavy silence. He gathers kindling for the morning, not because he needs to, but because it's his rhythm, like brushing your teeth or lighting incense. A small ritual that tells the world I am here. I am awake. I am listening. As he walks, he hums softly, a tune with no words. Maybe it's one his grandfather used to hum. Maybe it's one the forest gave him. Does it matter? From the corner of your vision, something moves, a hair, white against white, nearly invisible except for its twitching ears and pulse-like hops. It freezes, watches the keeper, then bolts gone in 3 bounds. He doesn't chase. He nods. Fear comes. Fear goes. The hare is not wrong to run. The forest is not wrong to remain. He returns inside and writes something small in a notebook he keeps by the window. Just a line. The fire teaches what it means to burn without anger. He closes the notebook and places it under the pine cone. You listen as he prepares his simple supper: barley bread, smoked root vegetables, and a broth that smells of fennel and ash. He eats slowly, every bite a meditation, not grateful out of obligation, but truly, quietly grateful. And then, with the fire dimming and the sky deepening, he sits back and listens. Nothing and everything. The trees shift. The kettle sighs. The stars begin to blink awake. And across from him, the memory of his grandfather seems to sit again, nodding, approving, saying nothing. You understand. Now, the most powerful teachings don't shout. They warm, like firelight, like breath, like pine resin releasing its fragrance into the dark. The moon rises like a breath held just above the tree line, casting long, silvery shadows across the snow. Each branch glows softly, as if lit from within. And in this hush, this perfect stillness that presses in like a thick blanket, you sense something stirring. Not in the wind, not in the trees, but in yourself. The forest keeper stands just outside the cabin, hood pulled up, breath rising in slow, steady clouds. He's watching the darkness not out of fear, but out of recognition. Night doesn't scare him. He knows it too well. He's walked in it, slept under it. He has seen the shape of his own shadow stretch across snowdrifts and return smaller each time. Tonight, the wolves have returned. Not close, not dangerous, just present. He heard their call earlier, a low, drawn-out howl from somewhere beyond the ridge. Then another, further off. They speak in sequence, not desperation. It's not hunger. It's kinship, a check-in, the kind that echoes through trees and time. He listens, leaning slightly forward, hands folded. When he was younger, he feared wolves. Of course he did. He was told to. Their teeth, their eyes, the way they disappeared and reappeared like ghosts in furs. But years of walking this land taught him something: the forest isn't cruel. It's precise. And fear? Fear isn't always wrong, but it's rarely complete. He walks into the trees now, following an old path, not to chase, but to meet. He carries no lantern. His feet know the way. And the snow, packed firm from weeks of walking, cushions each step. The trees part gradually, revealing a narrow glade rimmed with frost-draped boulders. He stops near one and kneels. This is the place. He's come here before, though never with expectations. Only presence, a sound, a crunch, deliberate somewhere behind him. He does not turn. Then silence again. The wind moves gently, brushing his cheeks, moving through the branches like fingers through hair. Another step, closer. He feels it before he sees it, the weight of eyes in the dark. And then there she is, a wolf, smaller than imagined, with fur that glows slightly blue under the moonlight. Not a threat, not an invitation, just a presence. She watches him, ears forward, body still. He breathes, slowly, without thought, without trying to be calm. She takes one step closer, then stops. They stay like this for several heartbeats. No movement, no fear, only breath, only being. And then she turns and melts into the trees. No growl, no chase, just a meeting. The keeper bows his head. Fear could have kept him from this, but presence brought him to it. He stands slowly, brushes snow from his knees, and walks home. Inside, he places a single piece of birch bark into the fire. It flares up briefly, bright and fragrant, then settles into embers. He thinks of the Four Noble Truths, not as doctrines, but as reminders. Suffering exists. Suffering comes from clinging. There is a way to let go, and there is a path. Tonight, he took a step on that path, not toward comfort, but toward truth. Fear visited, and he did not resist it. And in not resisting, he found space. Not all wolves bite. Not all thoughts consume. The mind is not a wolf. It is the forest. And within it are shadows and howls and quiet clearings. He closes his eyes and rests his hands on his knees, not meditating, just resting, just breathing. The fire hums beside him. The kettle rattles slightly. Outside, the wolves have moved on. He doesn't need to know where they went, because he didn't need anything from them. What he received tonight wasn't safety, it was clarity. And that is the greater peace. A stillness unlike any other has settled across the forest. Not the stillness of sleep, nor of silence alone, but the stillness that arrives when everything has found its rightful place. You feel it in the snow, which has ceased falling. You hear it in the trees, which no longer sway. Even the fire inside the cabin has quieted, its crackling replaced by the occasional pop of a sap bubble, like the final word in a long, whispered conversation. The keeper sits by the window now, chin resting lightly on his palm, gaze lifted toward the sky. The northern lights have returned, not loud or dramatic, not the swirling ribbons you see in photographs, just the quiet shimmer of pale green, like moonlight trying on a new dress. They waver just above the pines, as if the heavens are breathing. You sit with him, cross-legged on the old rug, wrapped in a wool blanket that smells faintly of wood smoke and nettle. He doesn't speak, neither do you. The room doesn't need your words to be full. He reaches for the pine cone and the pebble, setting them between you once more. Their shapes glow faintly in the firelight. The pine cone has started to close again, reclaiming itself in the warmth. The pebble remains unchanged, still smooth, still solid. Everything changes, and yet something remains. The keeper stands and steps outside, and you follow. The snow beneath your feet squeaks in the cold. Overhead, the aurora grows stronger, pale greens deepening to blue, then sliding back to silver. It's like watching the sky remember how to dance. You walk together beyond the clearing, past the place where the birch once stood, now half buried in frost. The tree doesn't ask for attention. It simply is. Its surrender complete. You stop where the trees part, and the stars reveal themselves, fully thousands of them, like pinholes in a great velvet dome. The sky here isn't distant. It feels near, like it's folding in around your shoulders, drawing you into its rhythm. The keeper bows not dramatically, but gently, like one tree leaning into another. You remember the teachings now. Everything is impermanent. Everything arises from conditions. The mind can be trained to see clearly. Suffering is optional when we let go of the rope. You remember the footprints that vanished, the birch that fell, the stream that moved beneath the ice, the wolf who came and went like a thought passing through the mind. You remember the pine cone, its lesson of timing, and the pebble, its lesson of surrender. You close your eyes, you breathe in, you breathe out, and in this breath, nothing is missing. And so, the keeper returns to the cabin, kettle warm and waiting. He pours 2 cups, leaves one for you. You drink slowly. It tastes of pine and memory. The fire is dimmed, the rug is warmed, the blanket holds you in the way only something weightless can. There are no more questions tonight, no more seeking, just snow, just breath, just stillness. As the northern lights soften and fade into the uppermost reaches of the sky, so too does your breath settle slower now, like a tide returning home. The forest no longer asks anything of you. It simply welcomes your presence as part of itself. You've been here long enough to be known. The trees have memorized your footsteps. The wind has learned the pattern of your exhale. You feel the floor beneath you, not as a surface to lie upon, but as an extension of the earth, of something vast and grounding. You feel the warmth from the fire, not as heat alone, but as kindness, as quiet company. The forest keeper has settled into sleep now, his figure a soft shape beneath a woolen blanket, his breath just audible in the hush. Even in dreams, he moves with stillness. He has become part of the forest, not separate from it, and perhaps you have too. Above you, the night sky deepens. Stars blink slowly, like ancient eyes closing in trust. No wind stirs, no creature calls. The forest has reached that sacred pause where nothing needs to be named, and everything already belongs. You recall, faintly now, the way the pine cone opened to release what it no longer needed to hold. How the pebble surrendered to years of river and motion and change. You remember how the birch bowed to gravity without struggle. How the elk's prints vanished without resistance. How the wolf arrived without threat and left without fear. All of these moments still move within you, but now they move gently, not with urgency, not with weight, just with rhythm. The breath comes again, and you realize you are breathing with the forest now, in and out. Let go of the story of the day. Let go of the unfinished thought. Let go of even trying to let go. Just rest. There is nothing left to fix, nothing more to do. You are not separate from the trees, or the sky, or the quiet hum of the fire. You are not a visitor here. You are part of it, and it, part of you. Sleep will come, not because you chase it, but because you have already arrived. So breathe, just once more, knowing this moment is enough. And let the forest keep watch as you drift. Good night.